Good evening, baseball fans. We are officially back. The Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network. I'm Mike Guido. That's Dalton Brown. Back for another season after a couple of month, hiatus. We took a little bit of a break during the offseason. And boy, there's plenty of stuff to talk about. We haven't touched on virtually anything, but the Super Bowl is over. Football season is over. And that means what, Dalton Brown? That means baseball season is here. So
baseball season never really ends, but now it feels like we should be talking about baseball and we're not talking out of turn.
That's right. Exactly. So after a whopping defeat that the Kansas City Chiefs took yesterday, which I was very, very happy to see, by the way, hopefully the dynasty's dead. I'm sure it's not, but whatever. Baseball is officially back. Spring training starts up this week, and we have plenty of stuff to go over today. We'll be discussing whether or not a salary cap needs to be introduced in baseball. The eye roll is already there. Yeah, spoiler alert, it should not. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll give away some winners and some losers maybe for the offseason, see which teams got better, which teams got worse. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then we have PECOTA came out with their projections. We discussed that every year. We discussed that last year as well. We'll see who we think who they're overrating, who they're underrating. We'll talk about that as well. But Dalton, it's been a long winter for me, at least. It's been a exciting winter for you. I'll say that. So how you feeling today, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just segue into my Dodgers rant.
Yeah. The Dodgers should just go first at this point. They should just go first.
Look, it's I feel like I'm starting to understand what it felt like to be a Yankee fan in the late 90s. Now, granted, the Dodgers have not won championships at that level yet. I want to make sure that distinction is crystal clear. But I'm understanding what it feels like now to be the evil empire. As a college basketball fan, I'm kind of used to that, being that I went to Duke, but this is kind of new territory now. Nobody can say anything about this World Series. And then you go out this offseason and you acquire Blake Snell, Michael Conforto, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. You re-sign Teoscar Hernandez and Kike Hernandez. You sign Tommy Edman to a longer-term deal. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting some of the moves that
Roki Sasaki, maybe?
Roki Sasaki. Yeah. I mean, it's Mike. I mean, look, the rotation is ridiculously talented, ridiculously deep. The lineup is a lot of what it was last year, which is really good. And I think Michael Conforto playing the Jason Hayward role is potentially an upgrade to Jason Hayward at playing that role. So I don't really have anything to say, right? I mean, even Dave Roberts, there were things that he did during the postseason that I will never be okay with, but the result was his intended result, meaning that his moves didn't work on accident. They worked the way they were meant to. And because of that, I'll give him credit. I don't want to see us conceding games this year, and hopefully our pitching is not in such shambles that we have to do that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, even Roberts, I got to tip my cap, give him a little bit of flowers. So yeah, I mean, vibes are sky high. I'm sure by mid-May I'll have something to be pissed about. But as of right now, I mean, I'm excited,
Yeah. I think if you're a Dodger fan, you're by default just, kind of over the moon at this point. I mean, listen, one of the things that you said last year that kind of struck me, and it's so true, is that the Dodgers winning the World Series last year was an absurdity, right? Because it was only going to get better from here with the amount of money they were going to spend, the amount of talent that they had already had, the injuries that they had suffered last year. The fact that they won a World Series last year of all years, and now we have to, I mean, at least for the next, 6 or 7 safely, we're going to be talking about the Dodgers at the top of the National League at the very, very least. Okay, so I have had a very interesting offseason. Let's just put it that way. So here's the thing. I remember, like, obviously, like, as heartbroken as I was to see Juan Soto leave the Yankees, right? I'll answer this question, right? I came into this thinking if the Yankees lose Juan Soto, there's absolutely no way that they're going to be a better baseball team this year than they are last year. Here's my answer to that question. I don't know. I don't know if they're a better team than they were last year. Certainly on paper, the roster seems to be a little bit more complete, right? Like the rotation certainly looks a little bit deeper. Max Fried, I think, was a great signing. I'm all for that. You know, did you pay Max Fried a little too much money? Sure, but who cares? Like I'm not really broken up by it. I think the rotation's deeper. I think the bullpen is significantly better, right? Devin Williams is now your closer. He's one of the top 2 or so closers in the game.
Fernando Cruz is nasty too.
Fernando Cruz is unbelievably sick, and the fact that you got him for Jose Trevino, I think, is really something. Cody Bellinger was a solid trade acquisition. Paul Goldschmidt, I don't hate. And listen, comparing somebody like Paul Goldschmidt to what you were getting out of Anthony Rizzo the last 2 years, it's an upgrade, right? Depending on how much of an upgrade, whatever, it's an upgrade. The problem is that you don't have Juan Soto anymore. And how much does that impact your lineup? And I still think it's significant, right? Aaron Judge is not going to have the season he had last year because Juan Soto is not hitting in front of him. I don't think that that's the reality. So I do think on paper, the Yankees have a more complete roster. They do. But is it better? I don't know, because Juan Soto makes that much of an impact. One of the things that is unbelievably bothersome to me, and I know Dalton is going to agree on this as well, the fact that Hal Steinbrenner and the Yankees ownership seem to have some sort of a refusal at this point to go over the $301 million tax, I think is baffling to me. It's baffling. Okay. You see the Dodgers with a $375 million or so payroll across the country who you just lost to them in the World Series. The Mets are going to have a $350 or so million payroll, and they're across town. They played the Dodgers last year in the NLCS. Okay. These two teams you're going to be theoretically competing against forever from now, right? Like that you are now, like these teams are now in your class at this point. They didn't used to be, but they are now, like for real now, at least from the Mets perspective, right? The Yankees are kind of operating, I don't want to say like a mid-market team, but as a not top tier, top market team at this point. Like,
yeah.
What am I supposed to say to this as a Yankee fan? Like losing Juan Soto, like I'll be the guy that says, listen, Juan Soto, I wish nothing but bad things for him in this season. As far outside of health, I wish nothing but bad things. I hope he hits 220. I hope Met fans boo him every day. Whatever. I think the Yankees made a fair offer. I am not against what the Yankees did, because truthfully, I don't know that the Yankees even had a chance to counter what the Mets did. Okay. So I'm not even mad about that. But now it's just kind of, like at this point, I hear Dalton right next to me saying, it's so exciting to be a Dodger fan. The lineup is so good. The rotation is so deep. What an offseason we had. The Yankees right now, as much as I'm pleased with the moves that they've made so far, to steal a line from Moneyball, if a ground ball is hit to third base, there's nobody there to stop it from rolling. Like, I just, like, it's this sort of like, almost there-ness that the Yankees operate in that drives me absolutely bananas. So that's the summation of the offseason I've had. Are they a better baseball team? I don't know, Dalton. I don't know.
I think that's a fair answer. I mean, because at the end of the day, what did they lose beyond Juan Soto? Now, I mean, that's not to belittle the loss of Juan Soto, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But outside of Juan Soto, what left town? Jose Trevino,
Gleyber Torres,
Nestor Cortez.
Right.
Like that, like, are you really going to miss those guys? I mean, Gleyber a bit, right? But I mean, Jazz Chisholm is better, right? I mean, I think
Jazz is better, without a doubt.
so. I think for me, thinking about the Yankees, I think what they did with their bullpen, Devin Williams plus Fernando Cruz, and then they brought back Tim Hill.
They brought back Tim Hill. They brought back Loizaga.
So, like, I think the bullpen again has potential to be excellent.
Yeah.
I think the lineup is less top heavy for better or for worse. Like, you know, and I think that could look. I mean, that lineup. I'll put it this way: I think the Yankees last year were susceptible to if Judge and or Soto is hurt, if Judge and or Soto are cold, that lineup all of a sudden can get really easy to navigate. We talked about that last June when the Dodgers took 2 out of 3 in New York. I came out of that series feeling like, man, like when Soto's not there and they don't have the acquisitions they made this offseason, I'm like, that's kind of a lineup you can just cruise through. I think given what Rizzo was, you touched on this, Goldschmidt is probably an upgrade. At the very least, he's not worse. And I think like now you have a pathway probably for Jason Dominguez to play. You know, Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
Cody Bellinger is one of the best defensive players in the game and is a very solid offensive player that can go on like Linsanity runs where he's just a god for a month at a time here and there.
And he profiles perfectly for that ballpark as well.
Yeah. You know, so I think like, and look, Max Fried, I, like you, thought they overpaid, but I, like you, take the who cares approach to that. It's not your money. It's not my money. So like, I think overall, I think if you were to, I'll put it this way. If you showed me the Yankees roster in April 2024, and then you showed me their roster in April 2025, not knowing that they made a run to the World Series last year, I'm probably taking the 2025 roster. Not by a wide margin, but I think I probably am. So, I mean, we'll talk about these things when we get into win totals with PECOTA. I haven't looked at like what number is hung at DraftKings right now, but like they shouldn't have a number under 90. Like I think they're a 92 to 95 win team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm sure we'll discuss the Yankees a little bit further as we get further into the show. But like I said, I forgot to preface. See, I got to shake off the rust. As we do every show, Yankee fan, Dodger fan, as you can tell now. If you're new to the show, that's where we are. We start off with rants for our team. Sorry, not sorry. My buddy Kieran Glenn in the comments on Twitter says Juan Soto, all exclamation points. Oh, listen, I've been saying it to every Met fan this entire offseason. I cannot wait. If people thought I was rough on the Mets last year, just wait. Because I cannot wait for the day that Juan Soto hits 240 in July and every fucking Met fan hates him. I can't wait for that day. Because you think, listen, Juan Soto had Aaron Judge protecting him in the lineup. Now who's protecting him? Mark Vientos? Like, stop. We're going to see a different Juan Soto this year. Mark my words. Anyway, again, shaking off the rest of the anger. Anyway, so Dalton, before we get into PECOTA projections, right, let's talk a little bit about this. So very simply, heading into spring training, right? We're starting spring training this week. Pitchers and catchers have pretty much already reported. What are you looking forward to heading into spring training? What are the things that you're looking forward to for this season?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I'm going to try to steer away from talking more about the Dodgers because me as a baseball fan, like, boy, oh boy, am I looking forward to the Dodgers this year. But really, this is the time of year where I get anxious and excited just about seeing what faces are going to do in new places. And, you know, there are some teams that I think like made, you know, we'll get into teams that, you know, made improvements, overrated, underrated, but like there are certain teams like that I'm more excited about than I probably should be. Like the Sacramento Athletics among them.
Me too.
I like what they've done with their team, and I think I'm not saying that they're going to compete for the division, but like I think the A's have done enough that they're more of a mid-tier MLB team now than a terrible team.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. I mean, going out and getting Luis Severino, Jeffrey Springs, that immediately makes your rotation better, and that's already a team that has some young talent in the pitching staff. Jose Leclerc and TJ McFarland, I mean, neither one of those are relievers that like are going to change everything, but they're major league talents in the bullpen. Like these are things that they haven't had, right? Re-signing Brent Rooker to a 5-year extension. Wow. Sweet. Like,
Yeah. Spending money, it's weird. Like, what the hell?
So like,
Luis Severino's their largest free agent contract ever. It's like $67 million.
yeah, I mean, for me, what I'm excited about is like if Lawrence Butler can continue to be this breakout player, right?
Yeah.
If JJ Bleday can be a dude, like Zach Geloff, like Tyler, like they've got talented young guys that if they take the next step this year, that division's kind of wide open, and they're not going to win that division, but I think that they've got an opportunity to rack up some wins. So they're a team that I'm excited to like check in on a bit early in the year in spring training. I'm also, because I just moved to Minnesota, I'm excited to watch the Twins, but not really because of their offseason. They haven't done a whole lot. And the other team, I hate to say it, Mike, I'm fascinated to see what the Mets are this year. Because like between Clay Holmes, Montas, Canning, Minaya, Soto, Siri, Alonso, I mean, they've gone out and they've opened up the checkbook. And my issue with them is we don't know if Clay Holmes as a starter is going to work. We don't know if Sean Manaea is that guy that he was last year or if that was a flash, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Montas or Canning are good. Like, so there's part of me, there's part of me that's like, look, Juan Soto is going to be Juan Soto, but like, can that pitching staff get anybody out? Like, I don't know. I think they might, but I don't know. So I have a feeling that the Mets are going to be in a lot of high scoring games this year. I'm interested to see what their pitching looks like.
Yeah, and again, I can't wait to talk about the Mets this year, just because I want to shit on them all season. But like that's part of the reason why I don't have like the Mets as like a winner. Just to piggyback off of what you said, for an owner that has, I mean, that's what they brag about, right? The owner where money is no object. Why the fuck were you not in on Corbin Burns? Why? What? Because you think David Stearns is this almighty Goliath that can turn Jose Quintana into an ace because he had one good season with the Mets? Give me a break. Like, it's just, I don't like, and I'm with you. Like, I'm fascinated to see what they can turn into, and we'll talk about it once the PECOTA projections are coming around. I genuinely think the Mets today are, all emotions aside, I think the Mets today are one of the most overrated teams in baseball. I do.
I think there's a chance that you're right. Now, look, if their pitching is top 12 in baseball caliber, they're going to be really good because they're going to hit. But I also think like designing your team this way when you play at Citi Field, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not exactly like a hitter's heaven. And so, it'll be interesting because I think about it this way. Like, Mike, let's say Juan Soto gets hurt. And obviously none of us are hoping for this, right?
Right.
But like, let's say Juan Soto gets hurt. Is the Mets team that's left if Juan Soto gets hurt better than last year?
No.
I don't think so, right? No. So like, yeah, you went out and you got a bunch of new bodies, but like there's still some intrigue there. And you're also in a division where this year the Braves are presumably going to be healthier. One would certainly hope.
Yeah.
The Phillies are still really good. I mean, the Nationals aren't great, but they're getting a little bit better. So I'll put it this way. Like you, I am excited to see how Mets fans handle like potentially being 52 and 45 and in third place in a really competitive division in June and July. Yeah. Like, because I think Mets fans are going into this season thinking like they're a 95 win team. And I don't think they are. I think they're an 85 to 90 win team in a division that has two other teams just like that. Yep. And like you could end up as a wild card going on the road in a 3-game series against a no fun to face team like, let's say, the Diamondbacks in a hurry. Just Baseball will humble you. And look, I say that as a Dodger fan. Baseball is going to humble us too. I don't know how yet, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, that second part I find very hard to believe. I think the Dodgers might be unhumbleable at this point. But that's actually one of the things. If you weren't going to say it, I wasn't going to say it. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to, honestly, is seeing just how many wins the Dodgers can have at the end of the season. Because listen, I'll throw out a bold prediction right now. I think I don't know. I don't think the Dodgers are going to break the record. I don't. I think they're going to destroy the record. I do. I think they're going to win 125 or 130 games. Like I'm telling you right now. Listen, as crazy as that sounds, I'm telling you right now, they are going to win an unprecedented amount of games. There's going to be a point in the season where they're going to be like 30-6. Like they're going to be so disgusting.
I mean, I would love that. And you heard me say last year, like, as we were coming down the stretch last year, I think I said, I don't even remember the exact words that I said, but I said something along the lines to you of like, hey, 2024 would just be extra. Like 2025 is when like the final Infinity Stone comes,
right?
Exactly. Because it's kind of a thing that Dodger fans have understood for a couple of years. And it's like, hey, 2024, year one with Ohtani, but 2025, at least Dodger fans have expected Sasaki. Dodger fans weren't expecting Blake Snell. We weren't expecting Tanner Scott. We weren't even expecting really Hai-Sung Kim. And I don't know how many Dodger fans were expecting Teoscar back. So, I mean, I was, but some Dodger fans weren't. So I think, like, look, I don't think we're going to win 125 games. I do think that, like, there is a range of outcomes, the most extreme of which has us threatening that record, which would be really cool and fun. If you were to ask me like where we end up, I would say somewhere between 105 and 110 probably, but partially just because like baseball has a way of like, I'm telling you, it seems absurd now, but there's going to come a game in July where we've got like a double-A guy making his debut on the mound and like Freeman, Ohtani, and Betts, none of them are in the lineup. Like there's going to come moments in the season where things are just kind of a mess. Like it's going to happen.
It always is.
I really like, like I think Kieran Glenn makes a great point, your buddy, with the comment though, where it's like, most fans aren't rational. That in baseball is such a thing worth noting because, and you and I will talk about this all year like we did last year, you're never as good as you think you are. You're never as bad as you think you are. Like this is a game that the reason it needs the massive sample size, and that sample size disappears in the playoffs. And like, I'm telling you, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Baltimore Orioles, like you don't like once you get into that postseason, you're rolling the dice. Like you really are. You just got to get there.
Yeah.
I think people, it's easy to forget that after it was Dodgers Yankees this year because it was like, oh, well, the two juggernauts made it to the top.
Yeah.
It was Rangers Diamondbacks the year before.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
And that's not out of the realm of possibility to happen again. So just putting that out there.
Yeah. And by the way, just a little side note, and it's an obvious side note, but just in case anybody forgot, the Rangers and Diamondbacks then failed to make the playoffs last year, which baffles my mind, which by the way, I don't think is going to happen again. I think both teams are going to end up making the playoffs this year, but, student of the game 225. I love this. Lots of Mets hate on the program today, and get used to it. Get used to it. It ain't going away. All right, so
and you know what? If the Mets win enough and shut us up, student of the game 225, you'll really enjoy the program then because we won't have anything to say. So.
Yeah, we won't have anything to say. I'm telling you right now.
Shut us up.
Yeah. See, listen, I've told you a million times, Dalton. I don't dislike the Mets. I hate their fans. I hate them. If they weren't such douchebags, I'd listen. I'd be okay, but they are. That's the problem.
I just like the Mets and their fans. And I'm
Oh man. Well, especially since Juan Soto's went across town. Now I kind of have to hate them, I think. Okay, so let's start out these PECOTA projections. And again, we're gonna have episodes further down the line in a couple of weeks where we literally break down every division by piece and everything like that. But I've gotten these broken down by division. I want to start here, right? So they have the Dodgers, and I think PECOTA, like, as far as what I've seen the last few years, PECOTA is very conservative when it comes to their projections.
On the extremes, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The Dodgers are not going to win 104 games. The Dodgers are going to win 110 games. I think they're underrating the Dodgers here. I think they are. I mean, the rest of the division seems pretty okay to me. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks have leapfrogged the Padres with the kind of offseason the Padres have had. But the Dodgers are going to win this division by 12 games. And, they might put I think they're probably going to put 2 teams in the playoffs this year. But I don't know. What do you make of this?
I mean, I think that Arizona being the new number 2 team makes sense, but I think it's still closer than people want to admit with the Padres. Like the Padres are still really talented. Now, they've had a horrible offseason. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They've had a really bad offseason. Their only signing is Elias Diaz. Actually, no, because this week they picked up Jason Hayward and Connor Joe, which is a decent little platoon in the outfield to make up for the loss of Profar. But as a whole, it's not an offseason that you're excited about. They've certainly lost more than they've gained. But I still look at a lineup that has Jackson Merrill, that has Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, probably Luis Arias, all at the top of the lineup. That's still really good. Like, that's still a great start. And I think the rotation, like, you still have Michael King. I don't know. Like, I don't think they are, like, last year, but at the end of the year, I thought they were like as good as the Dodgers. But to me, I would put them right at about the 87 line with Arizona. I might give Arizona the slight edge. But I still think San Diego is getting a little too much hate because of how the offseason looked. And I think that's a team that's like going to come into next year pretty pissed.
Now, do you think, like, I understand what you're saying completely. I think if the roster is as currently constructed, I think you're probably right. They're probably around the 85, 87 win mark. Is this the roster we're going to see all year, right? Like, are we going to see, like, is Luis Arias going to get traded? Is Dylan Cease going to get traded? Is Michael King going to get traded? Like, are some of these guys going to be off the roster and therefore then I think legitimately taking a step back behind the Diamondbacks? Because I'll be truthful, I think the Diamondbacks were not a bad team last year. I think they got better this year. I think adding Corbin Burns to that rotation makes that rotation fairly scary. So, like, I'll throw that question to you. Is this the roster that we're going to see in San Diego throughout the year?
I think as of right now, yes. Now, I don't know. I'm not in the room with the Padres front office. But I think, like, I don't know. Like, I'll put it this way. I do think if they get off to a really bad start, like, they might cut bait quicker than some other teams and all of a sudden be like, hey, let's trade Cease, let's trade Arias and all that. But I do think that the roster they have now can definitely compete for a playoff spot. I mean, Darvish, Cease, King, Waldron, Vasquez, you got Brito waiting behind, a couple other guys who are somewhat talented waiting behind. Like, I think that there's enough in the rotation that if it stays healthy, it could be decent. Now, I'll say this, though. If Cease gets hurt, if Michael King gets hurt, they're thinner than they were. But then, look, like, you're still talking about Arias, Cronenworth, Machado, Bogarts, Hayward and Joe's a good platoon, Merrill, Tatis. Like, there's still a lot here, and there's still a lot in that bullpen too. Like, you're still staring down the barrel at Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Morejon, Jason Adam, Robert Suarez. Like, there's still a lot of talent back there that, like, if their starting pitching can get them through 5 innings, they're going to be a tough team to beat. And I think they don't want to put it simply, I think they want to be really careful about selling because of what they've built with their fans the last few years.
Kieran, my buddy Kieran is in the comments like crazy today. It puts together a good question here now that we're on the division. I love the little caveat at the end. Yes, this is a serious question. Dodgers clinching the division before or after September 1st, Dalton Brown?
After. after. I mean, that's hard to do. Like to clinch it with 25, 30 games left. I mean, I don't know what day exactly the season ends this year, but
that division got weaker. Let me tell you. I mean, like
I think Arizona got better. I think San Diego got a little bit worse. I think San Francisco maybe got a little bit better though too. I don't know.
Do you? I don't know that they did.
Yeah, they did lose Snell. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I think I'll put it this way. Like, I think that the Dodgers are going to hit doldrums at some point this season where they're just like not locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Winning a division by September 1st is crazy. Like, I would have to look, but I don't know if the Dodgers have done that over this 12-year run that they're in. So it's hard for me to like expect them to do it this year.
Yeah.
I do think first half of September.
Yeah. I don't think that that's totally out of the question. I really think that clinching is one thing, but being well ahead, like chalk it up as
Effectively clinching.
Sure. Yeah, right. D-Rel's 93 here. Of course, the Met hate is extreme. What do you expect from a Yankee fan that just lost Juan Soto? And the Dodger worship is crazy. Again, what do you expect after the offseason that they had? What do you
I mean, look, I get it. Like, the Dodger worship is crazy across the baseball world right now. Yeah. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable because, like, baseball is baseball. But also, like, I'd be curious to know what negative things you think we should be saying about the Dodgers.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, throw that out there, please. Interact with us. But here's like, is it appropriate to say, and then we'll move on. But is it appropriate to say right now that, given how good the roster is with the Dodgers right now, if they don't win the World Series, is it appropriate to say that it's just an abject failure? Like, I know you're not like a fan of that whole proponent, but
I mean, here's the thing about baseball. Like, what the Dodgers have built this year, even if you believe it's unprecedented, which is up for debate, but what the Dodgers have built this year gives them, at best, a 30% chance of winning the World Series. Like, that's just what baseball is. Like, and I know that sounds absurd, but that's the mathematical reality of how this game works. The best team in baseball usually has a 20 to 25% chance of winning the World Series. Yeah. I'm willing to push that to 25, 30% for the Dodgers this year. But to me, if something has a 70% chance of happening, that thing happening can't be an abject failure. Now, look, as a Dodger fan, am I going to be unhappy with anything south of a World Series? Of course. Of course. You have the best roster in baseball. I want to see you win the World Series. But from an expectations perspective, like, I don't think it's reasonable to just be like, well, either they win the World Series or that was a failure. Like, no, the playoffs are truly like playing roulette at a certain point.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's stick in the western part of the country here. Let's go to the AL West. Astros won the division last year at 88-73. They got off to a terrible start last year, and then rebounded. Dalton, you were on the train last year of just like, hold on, they're going to win this division, despite the fact that they were terrible to start the year. You were just
I made a lot of money betting the Astros over and over to win the division at plus money, at even money. I'm not a believer. I wasn't a believer in the Mariners either.
Well, and that's certainly fair. PECOTA right now has the Astros one game worse than what they were last year. The Rangers as the new AL West champions at 89-73, with the Mariners at 86-76 in third place. They still have the Angels over the A's, which, again, I'm not certain I buy into that. Again, I mean, we're kind of picking at nothing now, right? If we're arguing between who comes in fourth and who comes in fifth between the A's and the Angels. But I'm sort of like leaning towards PECOTA being right about the Rangers winning the division. I don't know how good the Astros are anymore. Like, last year, they obviously took a step back, regardless of the fact that they still won that division. But this is another year of getting older. This is another year of kind of losing pieces. I know they added Christian Walker, but I don't know how much I buy the Astros. They traded Kyle Tucker. Like, I don't know if the Astros are in a position to comfortably win this division anymore. Just don't.
Yeah, I mean, PECOTA doesn't project them to win the division, so I
Right,
certainly
exactly.
wouldn't
No,
say.
they have the Rangers as right.
But I do think that, looking at what you've got up on this, or what you had up on the screen there, like two things that stick out to me. Number one, I still think the Astros should be the favorite to win this division.
Hmm.
Now, not an overwhelming favorite, but I still think they should be the favorite to win this division. And you touched on this. It was the biggest point I wanted to make about this division. Like, the A's outperformed the Angels by 6 games last year. I'm curious to know why we think that's going to flip around this year. Like, what makes us think that the Angels got that much better and the A's got, well, not worse, but that the A's have fallen behind them? Like, I'm not seeing any reason that would be the case. Now, look, let's talk about the Angels offseason for a minute, because they did do some things. Signed Yusei Kikuchi, Jorge Soler. I love the Jorge Soler signing. Like, that's just a dude that hits.
Are they expecting a full season out of Mike Trout? Like,
I mean, I'm not. I'm sure they are.
I'm not either, but
then you look at the other signings that they made. Like, Kevin Newman does not move the needle, right? That's basically a replacement level player. Travis d'Arnaud is 37 now. That's not going to help you. Kyle Hendricks should not be a major league pitcher anymore. And Scott Kingery, again, replacement level infielder, maybe. Like, I mean, so like Kikuchi could be a nice piece for you, but you just lost Patrick Sandoval. Like, to me, that's kind of a 1-for-1, right? You're basically just flipping Sandoval for Kikuchi. Okay, fine. So
I think Kikuchi's a little better, but yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, they're within a wide standard deviation of each other.
Yeah.
Jorge Soler is a nice get, but like, that's all they've done, basically, to me. To me, the only difference between the Angels last year and the Angels this year is they added Jorge Soler. And theoretically, Mike Trout will be healthy. I don't necessarily believe that he will. And everybody else is a year older. The A's made legitimate improvements. Like, they signed 2 solid starting pitchers.
Yeah.
They signed 2 at least somewhat solid relievers. And they re-signed Brent Rooker, which is something that I think speaks to where this team wants to be. And I think it's going to instill a little bit of energy with this team. So to me, like, you've got one team that outperformed the other one last year and seemingly is still rising. Yeah. And you've got an Angels team that's going nowhere fast. And, oh, by the way, still has the worst farm system in baseball.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Well, like, I don't know where we're going to find 76 wins. Is that the number with them?
76, like, 76.
Come on. I mean, that's crazy.
They're a 66 win team for me. Like that, that's kind of how I view them. I mean, they must be viewing JUAN Moncada as like a, this massive upgrade at third base over Anthony Rendon. Who
I didn't even remember that they signed Moncada. I mean, now that you mention it, but like, come on,
a few days ago, yeah.
I mean, come on, like, it's just the Angels are the Angels. It's a poorly run franchise that has continued to be bad at what they do. I do want to talk a little bit about the top, right? I don't think the Rangers have the best lineup in baseball, but I appreciate the excitement about it. I mean, I think
it is good. It's good.
It's good. So here's my thought on the Rangers in general is, like, if everything breaks right, this could be the best team in the American League.
Yeah.
But I don't really anticipate everything breaking right. Like, can Jacob deGrom and Nathan Eovaldi both stay healthy? If so, that's a great rotation. But, like, I don't really see any reason to believe that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And after those 2 guys, it's Cody Bradford, John Gray, Tyler Mahle, Kumar Rocker maybe in the bigs this year, Dane Dunning, Jack Leiter. Like, there's potential there, but I'm not excited about a whole lot of what I'm seeing there.
Right.
I'm not that excited about a whole lot of what I'm seeing in their bullpen. Like Chris Martin, journeyman, been around. Josh Spores has turned into something pretty strong, but I'm just not. I don't know. Like, from a pitching perspective, they're really reliant on deGrom and Eovaldi staying healthy. The lineup is good. Don't get me wrong. The lineup is good.
If they're healthy, they're going to hit a lot of homers.
They will. But can Corey Seager stay healthy? Can Adolis Garcia not strike out 200 times or whatever? Right.
Right.
There are a lot of guys that, if they break right, this lineup could be really, really good. But there's also a lot of really young guys that now pitchers have had an offseason to take a closer look at them. And I think there is some potential for regression with guys like Josh Young, even with like Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter. Jock Peterson is getting older. I don't know, right? Like I have question marks. I think there's a lot of B+ in their lineup, which is good. Like that's better than having a lot of C+ in your lineup.
Yeah. But they've pretty much got, like, if you look at their lineup too, Dalton, I mean, it's like B+ pretty much across the board. Like Simeon, like if you just look at, and this is just from RotoChamp that I'm looking at right now, right?
Yeah.
Marcus Simeon, Corey Seager, Wyatt Langford, Jock Peterson, Adolis Garcia, Josh Young, Evan Carter, Jake Berger, and Jonah Heim. Like that's like Simeon's a B+ player. Corey Seager's an A player when healthy, right? And then you're just looking at a lot of B and B+ where like you see a lot of other lineups in baseball where like, yeah, you've got some B+ and some A- or something like that in the top of the lineup. And then you get into, C- and C in the 8-9 hole. Like this is, I mean, for a pitcher, this is a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the Yankees last year. Like they're not top heavy at all, which I think can work really well. But I mean, I'm still not 100% certain that the Astros don't have a better lineup. Like, and that I don't know, maybe that sounds absurd, but like Christian Walker, Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, like that's a heck of a tandem of three, right?
Yeah.
Like Isaac Paredes in that ballpark is gonna hit and hit and hit.
Yeah,
like
whatever the over is on home runs with him, I would take that.
Do not ever bet a season-long player prop over, ever, ever, ever. I can get into that later. But I just think, Yainer Diaz is a stud. Like I still think the Astros lineup is as good, and I think the Astros pitching, like I just trust it more.
The Astros outfield sucks. I mean, Chas McCormick, Jake Myers, and Ben Gamel is their starting outfield at the moment.
Yeah, I mean it. I think Dubon will play out there a bit.
Probably.
I think Yordan Alvarez will probably have to play some defense.
I'm sure he will.
But look, I'm not. The Astros have holes. Like I'm not making a suggestion that like this is one of those like world-beating Astros 3 years ago.
No,
they have holes, but I think everybody in that division has holes. Like I think the Rangers could win that division. I think the Astros could win that division. I think there's a world that exists that the Mariners win that division. But I'll talk about their offseason in a little bit here. But I would give the Astros a slight edge over the Rangers for my money.
Yeah, the Mariners, are they going to hit? I mean, they didn't hit at all last year, right? Like Julio Rodriguez, like I'm going to assume, and maybe it's wrong of me to say, but I don't really think it is. I'm going to assume that Julio Rodriguez is not as bad as he was last year, right? Like I think we're going to see some improvement from Julio Rodriguez. Outside of that, Cal Raleigh is like, okay, Cal Raleigh's probably going to hit 30 homers. Arozarena is going to be all right. But outside of that, you're like Victor Robles and JP Crawford, and they brought back Jorge Polanco, who was terrible last year. Like,
yeah, I mean, the best newcomer offensively is Donovan Solano.
He gonna play every day? Like,
yeah. So I think like the Mariners for me, like, and this is something that we were going to get into in our next topic, but I'll just break into it now. Like, they to me had arguably the worst offseason in baseball. There was not a team out there where the path to going from being competitive to being a contender to win your league and the World Series was clearer. It was blatantly obvious that what the Mariners need are bats. And what did you do? You re-signed Jorge Polanco, you signed Donovan Solano, and you acquired Austin Shenton from Tampa Bay for cash. I mean, what are we doing? Like, you can't look at that offseason as a Mariners fan and feel like your ownership group wants to win, wants to take that next step. What I read from that is that your ownership group thinks, you know what, we were pretty good last year. Baseball is a game of variance. If the variance breaks our way, we could win the division. That's good enough. Fans will show up. Fans will care. Like, that sucks. I don't want my ownership to be that way. I want my ownership to have a killer instinct. Theirs clearly doesn't. That sucks. I feel for them.
Yeah. Yep. With you on that. Definitely a whiff of an offseason for the Seattle Mariners. Let's go to the East. Screw the Centrals. Right? Yeah, screw the Centrals. NL East. This division fascinates me, obviously, because you saw how it was last year. Put 3 teams in the playoffs with the Phillies, the Braves, and the Mets. The Braves and Mets, obviously, with that doubleheader that put them both in the playoffs in the last day of the season last year, with the Nationals and the Marlins at the bottom. Nationals showing some promise. The Marlins, I thought it was one of the highlights of the season last year was when Peter Bendix pretty much said, we're done in May. Like, we just are going to punt the rest of the season before the summer even starts, before school is over. I thought that was incredible. They're projected to be as bad as they were last year, exactly at 62 and 100. Oh, by the way, when I made these, when I sent these graphics to our graphics guy Alfred, if there was like a team that had like let's just say, for example, and this might not be it, but let's say the Braves were like, they had like a 91.5 win total. I rounded up in favor of wins. So you're welcome, Major League Baseball. So the Atlanta Braves projected to win the division at 92 and 70. The Mets 91 and 71. Phillies at 88 and 74. As far as the PECOTA projections, is it wrong for me to say that I still think the Mets are the 3rd best team in this division? Like, I don't like getting Juan Soto is a big deal. I'm not going to deny that, but if Kodai Senga gets hurt, and that's one thing, right? If Kodai Senga is your number 1, right? Like, Sean Manaea and David Peterson are going to get you all the way. Like, I just don't buy that. I think the Mets failed this year at tackling what they're supposed to do with their starting pitching. They bargain hunted for an owner that has unlimited cash. You bargain hunted in the rotation. That's crap to me.
I agree. Now, I think this division at the top 3 teams, I think that any of those 3 teams can win the division. The Braves, the Mets, or the Phillies. If any of those teams win the division, I'm not going to be surprised. I think the Phillies, therefore, are the team that's most undervalued. Like, I think people are kind of sleeping on how good that team was last year. Now, I get it. They didn't have, like, the most incredible offseason. But they did some things like, I think Max Kepler is a nice little get. I think Jesus Luzardo really helped deepen that rotation.
Yeah.
I mean, that like, think about it this way. If the Phillies rotation stays healthy, Wheeler, Nola, Luzardo, Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, if he does what he did last year, like,
that could be gross.
Like, I'll put it this way. Any given trip through the 5 pitchers in the rotation, like, that could be as good, if not better, than the Dodgers from a starting pitching perspective. I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying in any given week it can be. And so, like, to me, like, that's a massive strength for them. They have some of the best starting pitching in baseball. They went and got a solid-ish closer in Jordan Romano, but there's still some, there are questions about that bullpen. There's also a lot of talent in that bullpen. And that lineup's going to do what that lineup does in that ballpark. Like, you're still looking at Schwarber, Harper, Trey Turner, Alec Boehm, Nick Castellanos, like,
Guido, right?
Like, there's a lot going on there. And I think Max Kepler is going to love hitting there. Like, he's going to be able to hit down on the lineup there. So, like, I think that there's a lot to be excited about for the Phillies still. The Braves, I think that the Braves are, like, very wide range of outcomes because you don't know what Strider is going to look like or when exactly he's going to be back. Chris Sale, like, can he do it again at this age? We asked that question last year. It was fair to ask. It's fair to ask this year too. After that rotation, a bunch of question marks. I think the Braves and the Mets are built kind of similarly, oddly enough. But I don't know, man. For me, the Phillies are still the most complete team in the division.
I agree.
I think that's where I stand on it. And so that's kind of where I lean. I do want to talk about the Nationals a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously the projections are still not, like, super bullish on them, but I think the Nationals are a team that's like building sustainably in a way that like I'm excited to watch continue. And I got to give them a lot of credit for that. Like I think Mackenzie Gore is blossoming into a really nice starting pitcher. Mitchell Parker's serviceable. Mike Soroka, like nice soft landing comeback opportunity for him. Josiah Gray coming back from injury could be a really nice guy to have around. Shinosuke Ogasawara is a nice like veteran piece potentially. A guy that's been around a while. I don't think he's going to be like Roki Sasaki or Yamamoto, but like that's a dude who's been pitching in professional baseball for a while. Like I think that there's a bit to be excited about here. Like Nate Lowe, as it was a big subtraction from the Rangers, he's a nice addition to a growing lineup. CJ Abrams is clearly a good player. Like James Wood, I think could blossom into a stud this year. Yeah. And they got a bunch of other young guys to be excited about. So like, look, the Nationals are not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to compete. They're not going to compete with the top 3 teams in that division. But Mike, if the Nationals were to go 79 and 83 this year, would you be that shocked? I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either. I was about to say, like, you look at the top 4 of this lineup: CJ Abrams, Dylan Cruz, James Wood, and Nate Lowe. That's a legit top 4 in a lineup that's young. I mean, like, CJ Abrams, Dylan Cruz, and James Wood. I mean, who's the oldest guy out of that group? CJ Abrams, and he's 26 or something. like they've got something over there. It's real.
Yeah.
So, Karen Glenn, David Peterson at a 2.9 ERA last year. Don't sleep. Bargain hunted last year too, and look how it turned out. Yeah, I understand that, but it's a lot to expect when you just get like breakout performances from 3 different pitchers at the same time.
Yeah,
so a lot to ask for.
Yeah, I think Mike, I think you said that really well. Look, the reality with these Mets starting pitchers is like I'm not saying that they won't continue to be the guy they were last year. But in general, and I'm a sports bettor primarily. That's how I look at the world of sports first. In general, when a team or a player vastly overperforms expectation without a ton of great explanation as to why, I typically expect the boomerang to shift to kind of bounce back the other way, right? I think the Mets saw a lot of that last year. And if I'm a Mets fan, I would have been hoping that they add more talent to build on top of that, as opposed to running it back with guys who had career years. Because usually career years, especially when you're as advanced in your career as Minaya, Quintana, and guys like that are, usually career years are just that. And you're right. Minaya did completely change the way he pitched. I'm addressing that comment. Minaya, he did get better, but I still like the league's going to adjust back to him. Like, I'm not saying he's not going to be good. I think Minaya is a solid starting pitcher. But
they should have brought him back. Like, that was a good move to bring him back.
It's good to bring him back. But are you convinced he's an ace? I'm not.
No.
I'm convinced he's good. I'm not convinced he's an ace. But look, I mean, and David Peterson is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. David Peterson last year, 2.9 ERA. That's great. His expected ERA per Baseball Savant was 4.59. His expected batting average against was 19th percentile. Like he's 24th percentile in strikeout percentage, 16th percentile in hard hit percentage. That means that guys are squaring him up, and he got a little lucky, which happens. And hey, like there's probably a little bit more to it than luck, but reality is if you're pitching to a 4.59 expected ERA and your actual is 2.9, my expectation for you going into this year is going to be closer to 4. It just is.
Yeah. Yep. With you on that. Nationals going to be better than the Phillies this year. That's a hot take. That's a hot take, man. Listen, we show up in August and the Nationals are ahead of the Phillies. Listen, man, we're going to have to address that, I think.
Look, if the Nationals are ahead of the Phillies on August 15th, I want Kieran Glenn to come on our show and like
I will invite him on.
Call me an asshole and I'll pie my face with like
love it. Love it. I'll get him on the show one of these days. AL East. So last year, Yankees won the division. Orioles were the only other team in the division to make the playoffs, both over 90 wins. This year, PECOTA projects that nobody in the AL East finishes with over 90 wins. The Orioles taking first place at 89-73. The Yankees in second at 89-73. Again, a small deviation there as far as projections are concerned. The Blue Jays at 85-77. They have the Red Sox, by the way, finishing in last place at 78-84 as currently constructed. Now, I don't know that the Red Sox are done. I still think that there's a possibility they go and add Nolan Arenado, they go add Alex Bregman, something like that, somebody that's still out there, and maybe that kind of changes the number in a slight fashion. But I mean, I listen, as much as I think the Yankees took a hit from losing Juan Soto, I still think they're going to win 94 games. I still think this is a decent baseball team. And I think the Orioles are a 90-win team too. I just kind of, I don't know. I think they got this one a little wrong. That's just me. I'm not a huge fan of this one. What do you think?
I agree with you on the Yankees. I still think the Yankees are a 90+ win team. If you were to ask me to place an over under, I'd say 92.5. I am concerned about the Orioles. I think losing Anthony Santander is a big deal, and I don't think Tyler O'Neill is Anthony Santander.
No, he's not.
And I think that this is a team. They also watched Corbin Burns leave and replaced him with Charlie Morton and Tomoyuki Sugano. Those guys are not Corbin Burns. And so I get it. Grayson Rodriguez is continuing to come into his own. There are young pitchers with them worth being excited about. But Morton's 41, Sugano's 35. Andrew Kittredge in the bullpen is a fossil as well. I don't know how old he is off the top of my head, but upper 30s. They're kind of just putting a Band-Aid on things, and I am very worried that it's not going to work, especially from a pitching perspective. Now, obviously, they've got an excellent young core that will continue to establish a high floor for them. I'm not saying this is a 500 team, but I think 86, 87 wins is realistic. I think the Yankees are absolutely better than them entering this season.
Yeah. Do you think that so do you think the Yankees are the best team in the division at that point, right? Like 92, 93 wins, that's good enough to win the AL East this year, you think?
I think it is. To be honest with you, I think that right now, and this is something that I feel like has been the case a lot of years in the NBA and not as often in MLB. Mm-hmm. I think right now, the National League is just a lot deeper.
Oh, it's so much better.
It's better at the top and deeper than the AL.
Yeah.
I don't think that any team in the AL surpassed the Yankees this offseason. I still think the Yankees are the best team in the American League. Mm-hmm. I think if you put them in the National League,
they're fifth,
they're somewhere in that range, right? I mean,
right.
But in the American League, I still don't think there's a better team. The Red Sox probably got a little bit better. I think they probably raised their floor a bit with Walker Buehler. Garrett Crochet is a stud. Yeah. Chapman, Sandoval, these are all floor raisers as pitchers that are going to keep the bottom from falling out of that rotation in a way that will help them. If they go get an Alex Bregman, I think that'd be a nice ad for them. Yeah. But to me, they're it's interesting in the NL East. I think the top three can really land in any order. I view the AL East a little bit that way too. I think Boston could easily finish above both Tampa and Toronto. I think any one of those three teams could have the bottom fall out and finish at the bottom of the division. I think the Yankees and Orioles are 1, 2 in that order. The bottom of that division, I think, is kind of a cluster of any one of those teams could surprise us and win 86 games. Any one of those teams could see the bottom fall out and win 72.
You know what I think is so funny? So I'm pulling this up again. The Tampa Bay Rays are projected at 82 and 88 per PECOTA, right? How? There's no way PECOTA knows what the Rays roster is going to look like in 2025. Does that make sense? It almost feels like every year the Rays should be projected at 70 wins max.
I don't agree with you this year.
No?
No. It's a good young roster, man. First of all, Shane McClanahan coming back is huge.
Yeah.
But I think from a pitching perspective, Shane Baz, Ryan Pepio, Taj Bradley, Drew Rasmussen, Zach Littell. Zach Littell is older, right? Starter,
Yes.
long reliever, mix type.
Yeah.
But other than that, like these are all guys who the arrow's pointing up on right now. And these are all guys with a lot of talent. Like I think the Rays could have a very solid rotation. We know how good their pitching coach Snyder is at developing these guys. So I'm expecting them to be a top 3 or 4 pitching staff in the AL. Like that's just what I've come to expect from them. It's what I think they're going to continue to be. The bullpen's still really good. Like Edwin Uceta has turned into a high leverage guy, which is wild to think about as a Dodger fan. Garrett Cleavinger, another guy, wild to think about as a Dodger fan, turn into high leverage. Peter Fairbanks is a little out there, but good, right? I think Alex Fido could end up being a really nice ad for them from the Tigers. So I'm a believer in their pitching. And on the hitting side, Junior Caminero, I'm telling you, Mike, is going to be one of the best players in baseball. Like he's that kind
One of the
of
best players in baseball, you said.
I think he's a top 10 player in baseball by the end of this year.
Wow.
Like legitimately, I think he's that good. So like viewing it through that lens, right? If Junior Caminero is that good, Ha-Seong Kim's a nice ad. I think Danny Jansen increases the floor for them at catcher. Yandy Diaz can flat out hit, right? Like Christopher Morel is going to hit for some power. Josh Lowe is going to hit. Like Brandon Lau is going to hit. Like again, there's a little bit of Rangers to it where like I'm not seeing a ton of star power here, but I'm seeing a high floor. Like the Rays to me are a team where the range of outcomes is narrow. It's like they're going to win somewhere between 78 and 85 games. And like, that's just where they're going to be.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I'm with you. And listen, I'm that's not me saying that I think the Rays are going to win 70 games. That's just me saying, I don't know. Like, how can PECOTA project them for anything when they don't even know what their roster is going to look like? They got a $30 million payroll. Like, how the hell are they going to win 80?
It's because they're so young, but man, they've got talent still.
Yeah. They do have something. All right, let's go to the Central. NL Central here. They've got the Cubs at 91 wins, which is, I think, a big difference from what we expected last year. Last year, the Brewers won 93 games last year. I think it kind of surprised a lot of people what they did last year. Cardinals, Cubs, Reds, Pirates last year were the standings. The Cubs right now projecting as the only team over 500 at 91 and 71. The Brewers projecting at 80 and 82. Cardinals 79 and 83. The Pirates at 75 and 87. And the Reds at 74 and 88. You think the Cubs are this good? You think the Cubs are a 90-win team?
They might be in that division because I think that division is just so full of like meh, Look, I think the Cubs are a team on the rise. They're a team that we know, like, if they're in a position to spend money, they're willing to spend money. If they're in a position to add at the deadline, I think they'll add at the deadline. So, like, I'm pretty bullish on their direction in general. Part of it for me is their rotation, I think, has a pretty high floor, which I know you've heard me say over and over, but like, part of what I like when I try to project out what I'm going to see from a team, I like to think of like, okay, can the bottom fall out? Like, I think for the Blue Jays, the bottom can really fall out. Like the Cubs pitching wise, like it's pretty good. Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga is a really strong 1-2. Jamison Tyone is like the number 3 starter of all number 3 starters. Colin Ray is like the number 4 starter of all number 4 starters. And then like Javier Assad looked like one of the better pitchers in baseball at times last year. Matthew Boyd has shown flashes in the past. Jordan Wicks is very much serviceable. So I think that there's a decent amount of depth to that rotation where like if they sustain an injury or two, you're still sending out like a major league quality arm, which I think matters. I think Ryan Presley is a great add to that bullpen. Nate Pearson as a bullpen arm, I find way intriguing just given the arm talent there. Going and getting Tyson Miller could be pretty nice. Ryan Brazier was great for the Dodgers. Eli Morgan has been very solid for the Guardians. Caleb Thielbar, another guy with a ton of experience. Keegan Thompson, Cody Poteet with the Yankees showed flashes. Like there's I'll put it this way, like none of these are names that I'm going to sit here and tell you with certainty are going to be great, right? But these are a lot of names where it's like if a few of them break right, that's a really good pitching staff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like out of those like 8 bullpen arms I just named, if 3 of those guys end up being good, You've got a good bullpen.
Yeah.
So I'm bullish-ish on their pitching, and I think the lineup's good, man. Like the defense with Pete Crow Armstrong is great, right? Like I think
Yep.
Seiya Suzuki and Kyle Tucker are going to mash. Dansby Swanson is solid. Nico Horner's a good player. Michael Bush is a good player. Like I think that again, like it's a really solid group. They kind of fall into that Rangers category for me, where it's like there's just a good floor to that lineup. I don't know how much of a ceiling there is. I think 90 is aggressive. I agree with you there, but like I'll put it this way: like I'd be surprised if the Cubs were bad.
Yeah.
Like
No, they're not bad. They're
like
not bad.
I think they are the rightful favorite to win that division. I
I
would project them maybe 87.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're definitely the favorite for the division. I know they love Matt Shaw. They have high hopes for Matt Shaw, and they should. I think that kid's going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So I'm in it with them as well. Also, who's going to take it from them? Like are the Brewers going to do what they did last year, shock the world, and like I don't know that they're capable of doing that again.
I mean, I didn't think they were capable of doing it last year.
Yeah,
I mean,
nobody
all year last year, I said like what they're doing is kind of they're having just like some magic happen.
Yeah, it was weird.
I mean, look at the Brewers rotation. Like Freddie Peralta is solid, but he's not an ace. Like Brandon Woodruff is not really an ace. Like, and after those two guys, like I think the rest of it is just a bunch of like Aaron Savale, Nestor Cortez, Aaron Ashby, DL Hall. I mean, Tobias Myers might end up being a guy, but like he pitched 4 innings per start last year on average.
Yeah.
And now you don't have Devin Williams in that bullpen. Ugh, like it's just there's not a whole lot here that excites me. There's just not. Like I'll give them this. Like the Brewers have shown that they're really good at making a lot out of a little, so I'm not going to rule them out. But like I even think 80 wins might be aggressive. Like I think they're an under 500 team.
Yeah, I kind of think they are too. But again, it's just the way that they do things. I mean, it's totally plausible that they, I guess again shock the world. But again, with this roster, you're just like I don't see how that's possible. You look at the top of their order: Jackson Churio, Christian Yelich, William Contreras. Like that's pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. The Pirates. I don't want to spend too long on them, but that rotation could be really good. At some point in the year, right? I still think Paul Skeens. I mean, if you're telling me today to pick one pitcher in all of Major League Baseball to have on my team at all, I would take Paul Skeens over anybody else. Like that rotation's good. It's good.
Yeah, the Pirates bum me out. Like they just make me sad because like it's like a more extreme version of the Mariners where it's like
Yeah.
like Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Mitch Keller, Bailey Falter, Johan Oviedo, Braxton Ashcraft, Joey Wentz. Like there's just a lot. I mean, that's a deep staff. Like that top 3 is really good.
Yeah.
That top 3 is really good. And the filler for the rest of it, like I think you can piece together a decent enough rotation that like this should be a contending pitching rotation.
Yes.
Like it should be. And it's just not going to be because they didn't make any effort to get better offensively.
Yeah.
I mean, you brought back McCutchen. That's cool, I guess. Like you brought in Tommy Pham. Maybe like Tommy Pham as a baseball player. We've talked about this. Like as a baseball player, that could be a nice ad, but he's an idiot. Yeah. So like I just don't trust it.
Spencer Horwitz.
I mean, like really, like we're hanging our hat on Spencer Horwitz. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I love O'Neal Cruz. Like that's the thing. I love some of the young pieces they have, but you got to fill in the gaps.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you got to go. Like the Pirates would have been an awesome team to go swing a deal for Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
Like, be that team. Like go get Alex Bregman. Why not? Like go be that team. I just, I think this is the case of Bob Nutting, the owner, being more concerned with his profits than putting a winning product out there. And in his mind, he's like, well, hey, we actually have some marketable players now, so I really don't have to do anything. And that just sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. With you on that. AL Central, we'll close it out with this. This is it's interesting, right? Because the White Sox are terrible, but I think it's plausible that we could see any one of the other 4 teams win the division at the end of the year. Like I don't think that that's totally out of the question. The Twins right now, PECOTA has projected at 86 and 76, and they're winning the division. The Royals at 82 and 80, the Guardians at 81 and 81, and the Tigers at 79 and 83. That's what they've got last year. I mean, we were talking. The Guardians were a 92 win team last year. The Royals were 86 and 76. The Tigers were 86 and 76. Both of those teams made the playoffs. The Twins missed at 82 and 80. The White Sox obviously were historically bad at 41 and 121, which is still kind of hard to believe. But what do you like? Am I totally off base on this, Dalton? Like I think, you know, especially with what Cleveland did last year, I think it's reasonable to expect that any team outside of the White Sox can win that division at the end of the year.
Possible, yes. Likely, no. I don't know if that's kind of a cop-out answer, but
that makes yeah.
Okay. I do think that the Minnesota Twins are the most talented team in this division.
They were last
year. And they were last year. But I think last year everything broke the wrong way for them and they collapsed, right? I don't think they collapsed twice in a row. So, like, I think this is the Twins division to lose. I mean, like, look, if the reality for the Twins last year that, like, is kind of tough for them to swallow, but it's the truth. When Royce Lewis, Carlos Correa, and Byron Buxton were all healthy, this team was really good.
Yeah.
They just weren't all healthy very often. And I think I think you have to bet on those guys being healthy more often than last year. Like, last year feels like an extreme on the lower end of how often they're going to be healthy, right? Yeah. So I think if you get a somewhat healthy year out of those guys, they got a lot of dudes that just mash. Like, Matt Wallner just hits for power. Trevor Larnach can hit. Willie Castro took massive step forward last year, can clearly hit. Brooks Lee, I think, is a player to watch for them. Ryan Jeffers is a really good hitting catcher, and having Christian Vasquez still around is helpful. And now they add in, Diego Cartaya from the Dodgers, who's been our prize catching prospect for the last few years. He might get a chance. We'll see what happens. So, like, I think that this lineup could really mash. Like, this could be one of the better lineups in the American League if things break right and they stay healthy. That's a huge if.
Yeah. No, it is. I still think, before you continue, I just want to say one thing. The fact that the Twins have a shot with Diego Cartaya, who, like you said, was the prized catching prospect for the Dodgers, who was DFA'd because the Dodgers roster is so good. He was one of the best catching prospects in all of baseball, was DFA'd by the Dodgers because their roster is too good. Anyway, continue.
I think the reality with Cartaya, and I hate to even say this, but his bat has kind of fallen off a cliff, unfortunately. Yeah. In 2024 at the AAA level, he hit 208. Yeah. Like, it's just tough, right? Like, look, there's a lot of talent there. There's plenty of reason to believe that this could turn around for him. But, like, so last year he played, let's see. He played he hit 211 in winter ball, 236 at AA Tulsa, 208 at AAA Oklahoma City. 2023, he hit 190 at AA Tulsa. Like, he just hasn't shown that he can hit.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
Like, it is.
Maybe,
it is. I just think it's funny. That's all.
Yeah. Maybe I guess the reason I'm pointing that out.
It's the narrative, Dalton. That's all.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the reason I'm pointing that out is, like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, the Twins had this diamond fall in their lap. Like, the reality is, as unfortunate as it is, the Dodgers kind of gave up on him because he just kind of stopped hitting. So I hope he figures it out in Minnesota. I would love to see it. But I got to see it to believe it with him.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. So the Central is just it's it's one of these weird divisions because, like, you know, as far as PECOTA is concerned, like none of them are really that good. Like the Twins are decent, but
I
nobody's really
yeah.
that good.
I've got two more notes on a couple of these teams, if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah. Please.
So the Tigers and Royals, I think, are just like young teams that, you know, I don't know if they're going to be better than last year, but like I think last year showed that their team's heading in the right direction, right? Probably 80, 85 wins, whatever. I don't think that they win the division, but maybe they could. Two teams I want to talk about. The Guardians got significantly worse. Like, and again, I'll be eating crow again in July about them, but like losing Josh Naylor and Andres Jimenez from that lineup has to matter. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like Carlos Santana is not a good replacement for Josh Naylor in terms
No.
of production, in terms of how clutch he is. Like, he's not. I watched Carlos Santana here in Minnesota last year. Like, he's washed. That's just where he's at, right?
Yeah.
Like, Jose Ramirez is always going to be Jose Ramirez, but like, you need Bo Naylor to take another step forward. You need Brian Roquillo to take another step forward. You need Stephen Kwan to continue to be like the Jose Arias, excuse me, you need him to continue to be the Luis Arias of the American League. Like, and you need John Kenzie Noel to maybe strike out less. Like, if all of those things happen, maybe they do again what they did last year, but I don't see it, man. Like, what is there to be excited about in this rotation? Like, maybe they're the team that turns Luis Ortiz from Pittsburgh into a thing. Slade Ciccone in Arizona showed flashes. Like, I don't know. They have, but again, it's a pitching rotation that just like last year is a bunch of just a guys, and I just don't think that can work every year.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of Rays to it where you and I've talked about in the past how like the Rays aren't the Rays, the good Rays every year. They're the good Rays sometime when things break right because they really have to break right with the rosters they're putting out. I don't think it breaks right this year for Cleveland. Any thoughts on that? Because I got one other team I want to get to.
No. I think you're right. I think this is a team that's definitely worse. Carlos Santana is not the player that Josh Naylor is, and there's a lot of question marks, right? The thing is like I'm almost like not worried about their rotation because that's what they do, right? Like for like Gavin Williams is going to put together a 3.1 ERA this year for some stupid reason because he plays for the Guardians. That's why. But like that's kind of how I feel about their whole situation. I still think their bullpen is still nasty. So that's one thing that they still have going for them. And again, it's just like I don't know. I'm not saying the Guardians are going to win the division. I'm just saying that it's possible they do because like maybe the Twins are just okay. You know, like maybe the Royals and Tigers are the Reds of the American League. You know, like maybe.
So I think, I mean, I put that division in 3 tiers, right? I do think the Twins are a tier of their own talent wise. Doesn't mean that they can't get beaten, right?
The Twins, bar none, are the best team in that division on paper, without a doubt.
Right, and that's right now we're in on paper mode, right?
Yeah.
So like to me, it's the Twins, and then you've got those 3 teams in the middle: the Royals, the Tigers, the Guardians. To me, like I wouldn't be shocked if any order that those 3 finish in.
Yeah,
I want to talk about the White Sox.
You do, really?
I do, because pull up that PECOTA projection for me again if you can.
There you go.
Where in the hell are they going to find 61 wins? Like, when I first saw that projection, I like rushed to my bookies account because I had to see what win total he had hung for them. Like, he's got him at 53, which I think makes more sense. Like, there is no way. Like, look, I get it. 41 and 121 was an outlier extreme result. They were horrible. Like, if you let me bet it at 41 and a half, I'd bet the over, blah, blah, blah. But let's look at their offseason. You traded away Garrett Crochet, which was by far the best thing you had going for you on that roster.
Yeah.
For guys who, for the most part, are not major league ready. You signed Bryce Wilson. That doesn't move the needle, right? You signed Martin Perez. At least he will eat some innings at a major league caliber for you. Congrats. Josh Rojas is a replacement level player to me. Mike Talkman doesn't move the needle. Austin Slater will hit lefties a little bit, but like they didn't get better. Like that roster didn't get better.
No, they're terrible. They're
So,
terrible still.
like, if anything, I would argue that the loss of Crochet outweighs the minor additions they made elsewhere. So, to me, you're taking a team that won 41 games last year. You're basically just running it back, and you're telling me they're going to win 20 more? No, no. Like, just because the ball bounces a certain way, I think they win 50 to 53, something like that. They're not winning. They're not winning 60 games. This team's going to lose more than 100 games again. It's just going to happen. So that was like, honestly, Mike, when I looked through the PECOTA projections, Chicago's was literally the one that offended me the most out of the entire league.
Yeah.
Because I was just like 61. No, like no shot.
Yeah, they lose Garrett Crochet, and they're all of a sudden 20 wins better than what they were last year.
Like, what are we doing?
Oh man, so that's funny stuff, man. That really is. I'm glad you brought them up. We never talk about the White Sox just because they're so terrible, and we just talked about them to say, hold on a minute, you're still terrible. That's funny. That's
they didn't do anything to get better.
No, they didn't. They are awful, and they're probably gonna. I would bet that they trade Luis Robert, and they're gonna get even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not gonna be good for them. All right. Do you want to save winners and losers for next week? You want to do that?
Let's save that, and let's save the really dumb and exhausting salary cap conversation as well.
Sure.
I just don't feel like having that conversation right now. It's so dumb. Yeah, I mean,
it would never happen. By the way, the players would strike.
It's not going to happen.
There's no way it would ever happen. But okay, so there we go. Good show back, Dalton Brown. We're getting into gear, man. We ran long.
I do have a pick for you, Mike.
Oh, please enlighten us.
Little hot corner action in February.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's go.
For those of our 5 or 10 listeners, however many we've got, for those of you who are sports bettors, I cannot recommend enough. I think Arizona Diamondbacks to make the playoffs. Go out, shop, find the best line you can. I know at DraftKings right now, I think it's -125. This is a playoff team. Like, we didn't talk about them in too much depth, but like Josh Naylor is a solid upgrade from Christian Walker. Like, that rotation with Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, like it's a good, like Eduardo Rodriguez, like that's a really good rotation. And I get it. They're not going to win the division. But if you look around the league, like I think, so you're going to have probably 2 wild cards coming from the East.
Yeah.
And so you're telling me they need to be better than the second best team in the Central. I think they will be. Like, I think right now they're better than the Brewers. They're better than the Cardinals. They're better than the Reds significantly. I think they're better than the Padres. I think the Diamondbacks should be more like -170 to make the postseason, because I also think this team's going to be buying by the time we get to that point. I want to just take a quick dive on their roster just because, like, I think they're a really interesting team to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, they could win 95 games, Mike. They might. Like, they're that good from a pitching perspective. Like,
Yeah.
Burns, Gallen, Kelly, Fott, Rodriguez, Ryan Nelson, Jordan Montgomery, who knows what you're going to get from him. And then that bullpen's solid too. So I'm seeing a lot there. And then I look, Corbin Carroll started to bounce back last year. I think he's going to have a good season. But they're just deep, man. Like, Ketel Marte is quietly one of the better hitters in the National League. Josh Naylor is a great piece to put in the middle of that lineup. Geraldo Perdomo's turned into a really solid player. Like, I just look up and down this lineup and I just see dudes. Like, I think Randall Grichuk was a great guy for them to sign back. I think they're really deep offensively. They play in a great hitter's park. I think the pitching is great. Like, I don't like, look, they're not Dodgers good, but like they might be Phillies or Braves good. They might be.
I think they're really good. I think they're really good.
So, like, to me, they should not be close to even money to make the playoffs. Like, they're better than that.
No, I think they are too. That rotation, like, that was my first reaction when they signed Corbin Burns. I was like, okay, so they have legit 2 aces now, right? Like, they're one of the, how many teams in Major League Baseball legitimately have 2 legit aces in their rotation.
I'll give you a hint. They're playoff teams for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you've got Burns and Gallen at the top of your rotation, and then a bunch of good after that with Kelly, Rodriguez, and Fott at the very least. Like, that's a real rotation, and they're going to hit homers. They're going to hit homer. Yeah, Eugenio Suarez is going to hit 30 homers. You know what I mean? Like, and he's going to hit 7th in that order. Like,
Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy are going to fly around the bases and hit. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot there.
No, and they're deep. They're a pretty deep team too. Like Alec Thomas is not going to play every day. Jake McCarthy might not play every day. You know what I mean? Like they still have, by the way, and it depends on how they feel about him, but Geraldo Perdomo might not be their starting shortstop for the entire season, depending on how Jordan Lawler plays.
Right.
Like, they've got legit dudes.
Yeah.
On that roster. So I'm 100% with you. I think the Diamondbacks are very, very good. By the way, when we said it before about getting Kieran on the show, he said, "I'm there. Let's do it."
I have no idea who Kieran is, but I'll tell you this much. If the Nationals are better than the Phillies, I want him to tell me I'm an idiot face to face. So
it'll be an entertaining one. I want to end the show with this too. D-Rels 93. Thanks for the comment. Yankee fans are delusional. Listen, we may be, but not as delusional as Met fans are.
I'll tell you this much. As a third party who is not from New York, both Yankee and Mets fans are delusional. I think a lot of baseball fans are delusional.
Sure.
Mets fans take the cake. I've said it a million times on this show. I'll say it a million more. Mets fans have this uncanny ability to panic like the sky is falling and beg everybody to feel bad for them as soon as anything goes poorly. And then also be the most obnoxious winners the moment things go well. Like, the one constant with Mets fans is just demanding to be the center of attention and want to take, like, oh my God. I had a Mets fan arguing with me on Twitter last year in June that Mets fans have it worse than any fans in baseball. Like, literally somebody was arguing that with me in the middle of the summer. I was like, shut up, man. Like, it's just but that's just how they are. That's just how they are. They want the attention, whether it's positive or negative. And so guess what, Mets fans? We're going to give it to you. You might not always like it.
Yeah. And you know what? If Juan Soto wants to be a part of that, fine. Let him go. Let him be a geek over there in Queens, whatever. All right. That does it for us. That's Dalton Brown. I'm Mike Guido. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast. We'll be back every Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you tune in for that every week on the Grid YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. Again, plenty of great content to check out on there. All Even Podcast, Carving It Up with Bryce and Carver, all that stuff. Make sure you check all that out as well. We will see you next week. Baseball is back, baby. We're good.